Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Son of a Blitch podcast. I'm your host, George Blitch, and I just had a wonderful chat with Dirk Durham. You guys may know him as the Bugler. He's been making all sorts of content out in the outdoor world with, magazines, videos, audios, podcasts, interviews, things he's written. I mean, he's been all over the place. And, now he has settled in working with Phelps Game Calls. He's had a full-time position there for quite a while. And obviously when Meat Eater picked up Phelps Game Calls, he's now working with them too. There's some wonderful, videos that they've recently put out. The Ghost to the Northwoods was a real fun one that you can find on the Phelps YouTube page. I'll have some links down below where you can kind of get a sampling of what he's doing. But, he's a world elk calling champion. And he has designed some amazing calls, bugle tubes, and we talk a little bit about that and kind of, what he hunted last season, what's in his freezer now, what's going to be on his docket for this next hunting season. And we just talked a little bit about his history. It was a lot of fun. Dirk's an amazing guy, a lot of fun. Everyone really enjoys, him and his personality, and I think you guys will too. So without further ado, here is the podcast with Dirk Durham. Take care. How you doing today, man?
Fantastic.
Good deal. Well, hey, look, I'm glad you're here. As with a lot of my guests, the first thing I like to do is kind of bring it back to the beginning, give everybody a little sampling of where you grew up and how you got involved in your love of the outdoors and kind of maybe who are some of your mentors. Why don't you talk to me a little bit about kind of your beginning journey, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. So I grew up in a small town in America, north central Idaho, little town of Weippe. And there was like 828 people in that town when I grew up there, and it's even smaller now. It's like in the 500s now. It's a very small town, timber community. You had a little bit of ag close by, some wheat fields and wheat farmers and such. But for the most part, it's it's logging country. And my dad, he was a World War II vet, moved to Idaho to get away from the madness of the city and whatnot after the war and just kind of restart life and moved to this little town of Weippe. And for the history buffs, Weippe is where Lewis and Clark met the Nez Perce Indians. And they were on starvation's death door by the time they got across the Bitterroot Mountains to the Weippe area. And it's kind of like a high plateau almost type of country. And the Nez Perce Indians, they seen them, they saw them coming, and they're like, oh, should we kill them or should we help them? And because they were like, these guys have fish eyes and upside down heads because they had beards and blue eyes. They'd never seen anyone like that before. And as luck would have it, Sacagawea was a Native American lady from another tribe who some white people had befriended and saved her from another tribe, I guess, and said, no, they're good. Help them. Don't kill them. So they're like, okay, we'll help them out. And then they spent some time there with the Nez Perce getting nursed back to health. And then they helped them get in the river in their dugout canoes, and on down the Columbia River, they went to the ocean on the West Coast. But anyway, that's the area I grew up in. So, rich with history. Yeah. It's absolutely beautiful country. Lots of mountains, lots of trees. It's my kind of pretty, but almost everybody where they grow up is kind of their kind of pretty, right? It's a nostalgia. It's like, that's the kind of pretty I like. But anyway, my dad and uncles and their friends back in the 40s, when he first moved to Weippe after World War II, they wanted to get into hunting. And around town, around Weippe, down the low country, this is kind of like the low country, foothills of the Bitterroots. There were very few elk. So they had to travel, way, way, way back to the backcountry to hunt elk. And so they'd take these trips every fall, and they would be gone for weeks. They would just, work will wait. We'll go back to work when we get done hunting. So they would take horseback trips up into some amazing country, up the North Fork of the Clearwater, into the Kelly Creek area, and elk were thick. At that time, that had the nation's largest elk herd, Idaho did. And it was phenomenal. So I grew up listening to these tales, these stories. And of course, back then when they hunted, they didn't shoot bulls. Do not shoot a bull. We just shoot cows. You could shoot either sex, right? And they're like, don't don't shoot cows don't shoot bulls because they can be kind of ruddy and kind of tough, and they're just meat hunters, right? They're not into to antlers at all. You can't eat the horns, my dad would say.
Right.
And so, but like, of course, I'm like, oh, were there big bulls? And he's like, oh yeah, there were these really big bulls, and he kind of tells stories about that. So of course, my brain is just, you can hear the little hamster wheel going in my brain at that point, and then somewhere along the lines when I was a kid, I don't know, we were watching TV and there were some old Gordon Eastman movies, like the old original ones, and he hunted all over, all the Northwest Territories, Alaska, elk hunted, the lower 48, and I watched those and I'm like, oh my, that was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I told my mom, I said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a hunter. She's like, well, you can't, that's not really an occupation. I'm like, well, I don't care what it is. That's what I'm going to do when I grow up. I'm going to hunt. And from that time forward, I was very interested in hunting. My uncle, he ran a trap line. He did a lot of hunting, and he was a subscriber to all the outdoor periodicals at the time, whether it's Outdoor Life or Fur Fishing Game or Field of Stream. Anyway, he would take all of his old magazines and give them to us, and I would just go through them. So we had like a hoarder's amount of magazines at my house growing up as a kid, including resources. Yeah. Including National Geographics. My dad, he really liked National Geographics, and he liked hunting magazines too. But so that's what, kids these days, they have the information superhighway at their fingertips on a phone, supercomputer. Well, there was nothing like that. I mean, if you wanted to learn about something, you had to go to the library, but we had this giant library of hunting magazines. So I spent my free time combing through these magazines. So I knew everything there was to know about what the coolest rifle scopes were, and the coolest rifles and the cartridges and all the, the big game hunts all over the place. And, I just tore these things apart. And so I just loved hunting magazines back then. And then finally it was time for me to hunt. Well, by the time it was time for me to hunt, my dad had kind of transitioned out of being a big hunter. He was just, remember, he went to World War II, right? So when I was born, he was 50 years old. So by the time I'm 12 years old, he's 62 now. He's not a big, get out and break the brush or push the brush kind of a guy. So he liked to go road hunting. He just kind of like putt around. And I think he really hoped he wouldn't see a deer to shoot. I think that was his secret hope. Like, I hope we don't shoot anything. So he'd take me hunting my first year. And I had a few opportunities to shoot a deer. And he's just like, oh, no, you don't want to shoot that one because of this. Oh, don't shoot that because of that. And he had all these excuses. I'm like, this is crap. I want to shoot a deer. I wanted to shoot a deer so bad. I'm like, well, next year I'm not doing this. So the next year I was 13, and I would have my mom drop me off, or he would drop me off out in the woods. He would drop me off, and I'd be like, all right, I'll see you after dark sometime. So I would go hunt, because we had hunting just a mile from our house. Or is
this public land? Is this friend's
public land? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like state land. There's a lot of private timber company land, which was all accessed then. Not a lot of BLM or national forest down in that low country, but anyhow, and there was some private land too. My brothers were a little older than me, so they had already worked for farmers and stuff in the summertime, and farmers are like, oh yeah, you can hunt. The only rule is if you shoot one elk, you have to shoot two. They wanted you to shoot a lot of elk. Of course, you can't do that; that's illegal. But anyhow. So I had a good relationship with landowners. So my folks would take me and drop me off various places, and I would go hunt till dark, or they'd drop me off in the dark in the morning and pick me up at noon until I had a driver's license of my own. So cut my teeth on deer hunting. So that was I was all about deer hunting then. Didn't even have an elk tag until I was, I think, 15. And so I shot some pretty nice bucks. And then when I was 15, when I was 14, there was this pond close to our house out in the woods, and there'd been a bunch of bear tracks in the water or in the mud. And I'm like, man, I bet a guy could sit here and shoot a bear. So, I didn't know anything about bear behavior. I thought, okay, what we're going to do is I'm going to sit here by this big tree, get here like an hour before daylight and wait for a bear to come in and get a drink. And that's when I'm going to get him. me thinking that the bear probably comes in at first light, just like deer and elk, but
Right,
I'm pretty sure the bear came in the night or maybe in the evening, who knows. But anyway, I'm sitting there and I hear the brush popping, and I'm like, all right, get my gun ready. I got a rifle, I'm waiting, and pretty soon, oh, here it comes. Here comes this bear. And then out pops some elk. There's like 3 cows and a raghorn bull, and they walk out, and the bull walks right out in the pond and dances around a little bit, drinks, and gets wet and kind of wallows around a little bit. And the whole time, all I can think is, if I had a bow, I could totally kill any one of these. These elk are like 20 yards away. If I had a bow, I could kill any one of these elk with a bow. And it's bow season, right? It's bear season, archery, elk, archery deer, or rifle, or archery bear. So I'm like, man, if I had a bow, I could totally kill that thing. So pretty soon they wandered off, and I couldn't wait till my dad got there. He showed up around noon, and I'm like, okay, first thing we got to do, we have to go to town, and we have to buy some arrows, and we got broadheads. And I had a bow already, but I didn't have any good arrows for it. I had like 1 or 2 arrows, and both of them were different. Like one was wood, one was aluminum. The aluminum one, my dad, I'm like, hey, we have to buy. I bought 1 arrow, right? He's like, I'm like, you have to buy an insert in a field point. He's like, no, we can make one of those. So we get home, and he gets this little piece of metal and starts grinding it round and trying to fit it in there. And, this thing is about, let's say 3 inches long, probably 800 grain. This thing's probably 800 grains, that we're gluing into the front of my arrow. So that's the kind of an arrow I had. So, it's not good. So anyway, I'm like, yeah, we got to go to town, buy some arrows and broadheads, the whole setup. He's like, no, you're not doing that. He's like, you can't kill an elk with a bow. I'm like, you can. I know people who've done it. He's like, no, we're not doing that. And I was just crushed. I was pissed. I was crushed. I'm like, well, next year I'm saving all my money, and I'm going to buy my own bow and all the stuff. I'm going to go shoot an elk. He's like, okay. All right, whatever. So the next summer I worked hard. I was 15, got a growth spurt, wasn't kind of such a chubby little kid anymore. I grew tall, got strong, and bucked hay bales all summer for the local farmers, and saved all my money, bought a brand new compound bow, all the arrows, everything decked out, got clothes, everything. He's like, man, you're really serious about this, because I didn't spend a dime on anything else. I'm like, no, I'm going to kill an elk. And he's like, all right, I tell you what, you kill an elk with this bow, you kill a bull, I will reimburse you all your money you've spent. And I'm like, okay, great. So he probably thought that was a pretty fair bet. It's like, yeah, he's not going to kill nothing. Well, on the 3rd day of season, I call in a 5x6 and shoot it at 15 yards with my bow and kill it. And again, I didn't have a driver's license yet, because instead of taking driver's ed, I was bow hunting that fall. I was like, no, I'm going to go hunting. I'm not going to waste my time in driver's ed after school. I'm going to hunt every day after school. So it was a Saturday morning, and anyway, I call in this bull and shoot it. And my mom, she was sitting in the pickup, about a 1/4 mile away, listening to the whole thing. And she, I'll go back to the truck. I'm like, I got the bull. And she's like, oh, wow. So she went back home and told my dad to get his come along to load the elk in the back of the truck, and his $500 because I killed a bull, and he couldn't believe it. So from then on out, like, I'd always been, deer hunting, whitetail deer hunting in general was my first love. But my second love was elk hunting, and it just pretty much overpowered the deer hunting for so much more fun than, rifle hunting. So, and it just kind of went from there.
Well, I was kind of curious too. Like, I know you got a bow set up and everything. Were you, because for those who don't know, obviously you're a world-class elk caller. Were you doing any calling? Was it just circumstantially? Yeah. What was that like for you, and how did that work out? What was it like your setup? If you can kind of just paint me a little picture on that real quick.
Oh yeah. Well, my best friend and I, who my best friend later on married my wife's sister, so we're brother-in-laws nowadays.
Oh, there you go.
And so my best friend Randy, him and I were going to get into this bow hunting together, right? So we both worked in the hay fields and made money and spent all of our money on hunting stuff. And so he liked a certain kind of bugle tube, and I bought a different kind of bugle tube, and we kind of settled on the same diaphragm. So the diaphragms we liked back then were built by Lohman, and and they were just a flat frame. This is 1989, right? So
Yeah.
technology for elk calls was pretty low, pretty primitive at the time.
Primitive. Yeah. Yeah.
And I bought a Loman bugle tube, and he got this other one. I think it just said Big Bull Productions or something, and I don't know if that was a Glen Berry tube or what. But anyway, so we both had different tubes, and then he thought it would be cool to have an external call called a Elk Talk. It was made by Elk Inc., or it was called Cow Talk, made by Elk Inc. And it was this little 2 pieces of plastic. They looked like a couple credit cards that were kind of bent, and there was a little rubber band thing in the middle of it, and you would bite on it and then blow, and it would make kind of make an elk sound. It sounded like a weird bird, but elk would bugle to it. They would come to it, but it was not the best. So opening day of bow season, then my buddy and I, we show up and we get there, and I forgot my tube at home. And well, he had his tube, but he'd forgot his diaphragms. I'm like, well, give me your tube. I'll bugle the bull in for you. He's like, no, you'll call it in for yourself. And so he took his cow talk and jabbed it into the end of his tube and was trying to bugle, and it sounded horrible, but the bull would answer. And we were by a farmer's place there, and these elk were out in this wheat field, and we'd had kind of a wet fall and summer, and they hadn't quite harvested the wheat yet, so the wheat was tall. It was probably waist high, and so he was calling to this bull, and these elk weren't coming close enough to the fence line and to the brush and the trees to us. So he just gets this wild idea. He just hunches over, and he kind of hunches over and puts his bow over above his head like antlers, and just kind of starts running out through that wheat field, showing a shape, and it looked like antlers coming through the wheat field. So he ran out there and then just kind of disappeared. And that bull seen him, and it just came running from the other side of the field. It was about 200 yards away when he seen him, and that thing just came barreling over to him. And I'm like, God, that thing's going to step on him any second. Like, what's he doing? The thing's standing there just perfect. Pretty soon it kind of jumps around, looks around, and it jumps around, looks around again, and then takes off and bugles and gets the cows rounded up, and away they go. And they disappear out of the field, and he comes back. I'm like, did you get him? He's like, no, I missed twice. Like, how could you miss? He's like on top of you. He's like, it was like on top of me.
Too close.
Well, right. Years later, he would admit, he's like, I finally figured out, because he shot every arrow in his quiver at bulls, like 6 different bulls he missed in one morning. And come to find out, he's like, I finally figured out, he's like, I just kind of black out. I pull my bow back, and I don't even put my sights on it. I just pull back and like point my bow towards the elk and shoot. I just kind of black out. And finally, after he identified his problem, he was able to like start killing stuff with his bow.
Yeah.
But but that's pretty common. A lot of people do. But anyway, back to the calls. That's what our calls were. It seems like people kind of are naturally gifted at calling. You either kind of get it right away, or you struggle for a long time. I picked it right up. I think the shape of my palate is just the right shape to where I can call easily with it. The learning curve wasn't that bad, and he was pretty good with his calls too. So I took right off, and there were some local people we knew that had bow hunted and were calling, and we'd go like, all right, let's hear your bugles, and we'd bugle for him. Like, oh, that's really good. That's pretty good. But until that opening day of season, I'd never really heard an elk bugle in the wild before. We'd watch lots of videos, but I'd never heard a bull bugle in the wild. And when I heard the bull bugle and then grunt, I'm like, oh yeah, my grunts they're not right. They're not right at all. So listening to the bulls, that season we chased bulls every morning before school. So I killed my bull early, 3rd day of season. He ended up not getting one, but so every morning before school we would go hunting, and then on the weekend we'd hunt. So we hunted pretty much 30 days straight that first year of bow hunting. And so by the end of season, I could call pretty good for the calls we had back then.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, then how did you, because I know that there was like a thing in 08 and 17, you were at the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. You had, won calling contests, but previous to that, when were you first kind of involved in doing some contests and realizing like, hey, this is something that I'm really good at? And also, was there people who were kind of approaching you early on when you were doing this and saying, "Hey, I kind of want you to work with us and maybe try this call," and doing any kind of promotion? Like when you kind of took that to another level of, kind of having a professional aspect of it or any kind of
Mhm.
sponsorships, when did that
Mhm.
aspect of your kind of, outdoor career come into play?
Well, I started competing in the elk calling in like 1994,
Hmm.
and a buddy of mine, he's like, "Yeah, you should go. You're really good." And him and his dad had won the bugling contest before, and he's like, "Yeah, you should go. You're really good." I'm like, I don't know. Finally talked me into it, and I went. And I don't think I won until the first time I won might have been 97.
Hmm.
Um, and in 90 six maybe I won first, or I won second and my buddy won first, and I'm like, this is dumb, we shouldn't compete against each other. He's like, yeah, his dad owned a calling company, so he competed in the pros then the next year,
Right.
the year I won first. So then he won first and then I won first, so we could both win, right? So it just made sense. He worked for his dad owned a calling company. So fast forward over the years, and then it wasn't until 2017 did I have any kind of opportunities with any kind of, sponsorship type stuff for elk calls. That my buddy and his dad's company, I guess he wasn't really looking to, you know, to do any kind of sponsorship stuff at that time. He'd give me calls and stuff,
Right.
but never give me anything else. So, and I met Jason Phelps in, it must have been 2012. And that same buddy that I competed elk calling with, then him and I started an elk hunting magazine called Extreme Elk Magazine.
Hmm.
And Phelps had sent us his story about his big Cascade Roosevelt that he shot. That's a giant 360 bull. And so we'd met him at, I think, shortly thereafter at one of the calling contests, and got to be friends. And then in 2017, 2016, even before that, he's like, yeah, man, if you ever want to do anything, with calls, let me know. And I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of loyal to my buddy and his dad and this and that. And then, fast forward a few years, I'm like, you know what? I'm not really getting anywhere with this other company. You know what? I got somebody here knocking on my door, beating on my door. He wants to do business, wants to do some cool stuff. And I like him. I like Jason a lot. He
Yeah.
seems like a great guy. I'm like, yeah, let's do something. So then, I designed the Maverick diaphragm, and then it just took off from there. So, and then in 2019, then I went full-time working for Phelps as a marketing manager.
And then what was that when you first were working with him? I know you've done some filming, some editing, producing,
Yeah.
directing.
Mm-hmm.
So is that were you wearing a bunch of different hats all at once and it was just kind of under the umbrella of the marketing? Or like when you were first brought on, what was that idea of like what you were going to be doing on kind of your day to day? And what was that like for you making that transition into that in a full-time role?
Yeah, so that was my job title was sales and marketing manager when I first came on at Phelps, and but not to exclude other things, whether it was product development, project management, whether we had some new stuff coming out, like dealing with vendors, dealing with vendors and getting everything put together and get the stuff shipped here on time, and, yada, 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 so we can get this thing to market. Yeah, and then production, film production, content creation, editing. I kind of wear lots of different hats,
Yeah.
social media management. It was kind of the deal like, yeah, you can come to work for us, but what are you going to do? I'm like, well, I could do this, and
Everything.
this.
Yeah.
Anything you want me to do, basically. He's like, all right. I'm like, anything you're too busy to do. Because mind you, at the time, Jason was still working a full-time job
Yeah.
at the state of Washington. And he's like, well, I could take some stuff could come off my plate. So I was able to take a lot off of his plate, over the next couple of years. And that was pretty nice. And then, to this day, my job titles even changed even more. It changed to like now I work for Meat Eater. So Phelps is my I work under the Phelps umbrella, but Meat Eater is I answer to a Meat Eater boss, and Meat Eater sends my paycheck. But I don't really answer to my meat eater boss. He doesn't really has anything for me to do. Like it's all still Phelps. So, Jason and I talk every day, and we're working on all of our all the Phelps stuff behind the scenes. So, and I'm still editing all the videos and a lot of that kind of stuff, and still managing social media and doing a lot of marketing roles still. So,
well, and you're also doing some podcasting work there with Cutting the Distance. You guys are. Is it still the plan? You're kind of doing every other one, and I mean, I know that that was kind of when you brought on to do that. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? I mean, I know you did the Bugler podcast for a bit. And you had a handful of episodes there, and you had Jason on there. But then when you started kind of coming in and taking on that role too, so that you guys could both kind of cover different grounds and some of the same together. Why don't you mention a little bit about, kind of what that's like for you and what you set out to do within your episodes that you're, managing and hosting?
Yeah. So the Bugler Broadcast podcast was my baby, under my channel, The Bugler, on YouTube and on podcasts. And about the time I was getting going good on that, then, Phelps Game Calls was acquired by Meat Eater, and part of the contract was I start putting all my content efforts into the Phelps bucket. So I quit putting stuff on my channel and start putting everything into Phelps. And then, but at that time we didn't have an opportunity for a podcast. And after the first year, then Jason was given the opportunity to do the Cutting the Distance podcast. Remy Warren was leaving, and they said, "Hey, Jason, would you do this?" And he's like, I think he reluctantly accepted. He's just like, I guess I could probably do that. So then he did it for a year or so, and then they're like, and it was only a twice a month podcast. They're like, if we got Dirk involved, we could do 2 more episodes a month, and then it could be, once a week. So they're like, yeah, let's do that. So then I got invited to be a co-host or a host on the podcast. So by design, I'm supposed to do 2 a month, and he's supposed to do 2 a month. But sometimes we get our scheduling crossed, or he'll be busy. He'll be gone doing something, and he'll like, "Hey, can you do these?" And then whenever I get back, he'll reciprocate and kind of fill in where so he'll take my 2, and then a couple other 2, and then he'll fill in mine.
It averages out, right?
Yeah, it all averages out. Yeah. And so that's been good. And podcast doing really well. You got a lot of the downloads are really good. A lot of listeners. And we try to do, listener questions every so often, because, people can send an email in, and I have a super secret number they can call in, and they can, maybe they just rather just call and say what they want to say, and then I can play their message and then answer it like that. I kind of like to do it like that. It seems a little more personal. Yeah. So,
yeah. Do you want to share that number with us now? Do you have it committed to memory, or we'll put it in the show notes?
We'll put it in the show notes. Let's do that, because I don't have it memorized.
Secret. You have to go to the show notes, y'all. We're not even going to say it out loud. We don't. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I remember you had that in the Bugler Broadcast podcast, and that was a really cool idea. When I saw that, and you were like, "Hey, you had the number," and I think it's a really great thing, because I've asked people during podcasts, hey, what kind of questions you have? And sometimes you get them, but I think sometimes people are just like, I don't really want to type it out. Just being able to call and say, blah, 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 blah. Hey, I really want to know this. I'm in this situation. What call sequence should I try? Whatever it is. And obviously, you've been hunting elk for like 35 years about. And so you've had a lot of situations that you can talk about. And I wanted to run into one question, because you mentioned earlier about like how that area that you had hunted was one of the largest, groups of elk, one of the, habitats there. And in an interview that I saw you kind of talking back and forth about how like those were the good old days there, and that things have changed. And, I know that there is this idea too of the introduction of wolves, and, how they have maybe decimated certain elk populations. Yeah. And I was curious, and I think there was one time you talked too about weather being a big factor one year, and then the wolves came in. It was just kind of like, a situation of all these errors kind of having it, a devastating impact. And I was kind of wanting you to walk through when did this change? When were the good old days, do you see things changing now, or do you still see a lot of difficulty in the areas where you're hunting and what you're kind of talking about there?
Yeah. So that region of Idaho, they kind of dub it the Clearwater region. And it's a pretty large area. I think that area is probably over 3 million acres, of mostly Forest Service land. And back in 1910, there was they call it the Great Fire or whatever, and it burned the entire backcountry of the Clearwater region and on up into the panhandle of Idaho, up towards Kellogg, Idaho. I mean, way up north, and millions and millions of acres burnt. And fast forward to the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s in Idaho. Well, all the vegetation started growing back, made fantastic elk habitat, sure. Right? And so that was the boom time, the 70s and 60s and 40s, like my dad was saying. He's like, there were trails you could have drove a Jeep, elk trails you could drive a Jeep on almost, if it, it was pretty vertical, but they were that wide, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of elk everywhere. Anywhere you look, there was elk all the time. So you go from that to where by the time, I'm able to hunt elk, it's still really good compared to today. Mm-hmm. But it's nothing compared to what it was even in the 70s and early 80s. I did a podcast on cutting the distance with a guy named George Beatus, and he'd hunted that famed Clearwater country back in the 70s and early 80s. And it was incredible. The story he told about it. I didn't see that in my time. Things had gotten, less elk, by the time I was able to hunt, but still really good. So you start having an aging forest. So you have less grasses, the brush, the shrubs, everything they're starting to mature and get tall, really tall. So you have less feed, you have less feed on the winter ground. So, a habitat does play a part in this overall. But also, they were on a slow decline between that, and the number of, predators. So bears were taking a pretty good hit there in the 80s on the elk in the Clearwater region. They've done lots of studies, and you can even buy 2 bear tags in that area to this day because they're trying to curb the number of predators in that area. But so by the time 1995 comes along, that's the year they introduce wolves to Idaho, reintroduce right. Wolves, right? So they reintroduced these wolves to Idaho in 1995. And then in 96, we have a 100-year winter. It came early, in October, we had giant snow. They got their camps and their RVs and stuff snowed in the backcountry. They had to leave them. They barely got out with their life type of thing, that year. And then the snow never left until probably that next February. And then we had these big warm Chinook winds, they call them, and warmed up and started melting snow. And then now we had floods, right? Rivers were swollen, roads were getting washed out. And, I lived in the little town of St. Mary's, Idaho at that point up north, and the town was getting flooded, and, it's just a crazy, crazy time. Right. But during that winter of 96, those elk just took a pounding. They had like a 80 to 90% die off in certain areas, in North Idaho. And, the wolves hadn't got a real good stronghold at that point. So by the year 2000, elk were on the rebound pretty well. I felt like from what I was seeing hunting, it was very similar, if not as good or maybe better than what I'd seen, previously. Mm-hmm. And then I started hearing howls. I started seeing wolf scat. And then from about 2003 on, then the elk just kind of disappeared. You no longer heard bugles. You no longer saw rubs. You no longer saw tracks. You no longer saw elk sign in a lot of these places. And by 2004, I hunted up there in that area, and I was just like, man, I'm never coming back here until they get rid of these wolves, or this place burns again, because the habitat was pretty choked out at that point. Well, a lot of that country's burnt now. But that's more of their summer and fall, type habitat, not the winter habitat. Uh-huh. But the wolves are still there. Not as many as there were. Like in 2007, there was nowhere in North Idaho you couldn't drive and in the mountains and look out your window and see wolf tracks. There was wolf tracks everywhere, all the time. Anywhere you went, you could see wolf tracks. Nowadays, it's almost like it's kind of like when we first started seeing wolves on the landscape. You'll see wolf tracks and wolf scat from time to time, but nothing like it was in like 2007. 2007 for me in my area seemed like that's when it kind of peaked for the numbers. And then now, some years you won't see much for wolf sign at all. And then the next year, like in 2022, I didn't see that summer and that fall. I didn't see any wolf sign in this area I hunted with my rifle. 2023, wolf sign again. So, I think where the wolves live is kind of cyclical. Maybe they'll live in an area for a while and they find that there's not a lot of game. They move on and they may come back eventually to it.
Sure.
So I think that's kind of what I've been seeing. But that Clearwater region, you went from like having 24,000 elk on the landscape to about 2,000 elk within 3 or 4 years.
That's a huge difference.
Right.
What did that do for you? Because I'm sure that there's so many frustrations that come into play when something like that happens. Was there another spot that you would go to hunt, or other states that you would travel to, or were you kind of just sticking it out a lot of times there and kind of hunting what you knew?
Yeah, at that time in my life and with my time off and stuff to go hunting, I'd have a week a year to go hunting, and then maybe a weekend. So I tried to hunt, close to home. So I would try to it was almost like having a big breakup with a girlfriend, or getting a divorce from your hunting spot, right? It's like, man, I love that place, but man, it just did me wrong. So you kind of give up on it, and then you go to try to find new places. But I'd always had to kind of hunt fairly close to where I lived, just because of the time I had off. And
sure.
I worked a lot of hours on my day job. All week. I was working 60 to 70 hours a week, so I didn't have a lot of time to goof off and scout and stuff. But as time went by, I think in 2010 I changed jobs, and then I had a lot more time. I had weekends off and I had a lot of vacation time, and I was able to get back in the swing of things. But I kind of started hunting some of the same old spots again. It's like you kind of get sucked back into those bad relationships, right?
Of course, yes.
But the good thing, what some people, they don't understand. They'll see like, oh yeah, well, you hunt that area and you have some success, but I know that area like the back of my hand. I know if the elk are not here, probably going to run into some over here. And if they're not there, they're going to probably be over in this other spot. Whereas if you had to come in cold turkey, you'd never been there, let's say you were hunting as a non-resident, you'd come in and you might spend 10 days and not even find elk. Because it's big, ugly country, nasty country with, and the elk they're hard to find in that kind of country. You can't glass them. You can't get up on a high perch and glass. There's so much timber and foliage on the brush that you hardly ever see an elk in the open. So binoculars are almost worthless in a lot of that country.
Well, and there was, I was thinking about that kind of environment there, and I'm not exactly sure. I know you'd mentioned it in the video, but you have the Ghosts of the North Woods. What area were you filming that in?
That's North Idaho.
Okay. Because, it looked like some serious terrain, thick, steep. It's so challenging. And so whenever you're talking about that, I have this idea, and I think everyone should go check out that video. It's a really good one. And man, you change a truck tire fast, by the way.
Yeah, that good. Well, I spent 18 years working in the tire industry. So, basically a pit crew.
A one-man pit crew. You're like, I can do all this at the same time myself.
Yeah.
But no, that it was, and that video too, for those who haven't seen it, I don't want to tip anything off, but it seems like there may be a part 2 to that. Is there a part 2 coming? I remember there was a talk at the end. Again, I don't want to leave much out, but
no, I'd like there to be.
Yeah.
But so that hunt was in 2022. I haven't got my 2023 season edited yet, so I didn't hunt up there in that same spot in 2023. And then 2024 looks like I'm going to be in a different spot again, like the opposite of that. It's going to be big, steep, wide open type country, by the looks of what I got coming up. So, maybe it's a 2025 project. I'll get to go back up there, but I don't know. I still run trail cameras up there. I've got some soaking on that same ridge where I called in that giant bull. I'm hoping they'll go up there and I can't get up into that country until July of this next summer. So, the snow doesn't leave. It's like impassable until July. So,
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'll get up in there in July and check my camera and see if he even came back or not. But, anyway, that's
Was
one
that
of my
your
big
biggest bull
hobbies.
that you've seen to date in the flesh, or at least in Idaho?
No, in 2001, I called in a giant bull that was found the next year, dead, wolf kill, and it's a 400-inch bull. It's a bull it's incredible. It's got 24-inch brow tines and thirds and fourths, and the mass on the burr is like probably 15 inches around the burr part. It's an incredible elk. And I highly doubt you'll ever see an elk like that come out of North Idaho again. I hope so. I'm like very hopeful that there will be. But that bull was old. He had great genetics. He had good feed. He had the perfect life. But anyway, so that bull on that bull, Ghost Bulls of the North, then he wasn't that big. I mean, he was big, but he was the biggest bull I've seen in Idaho since 2001. So.
Well, and just to give, I am not an elk hunter, but I do know enough about what it, quantifies big bull. But for those who are listening, who maybe not, when you're saying, a 400, I mean, that's a massive bull. What is that kind of, what would you give people in saying like, this is an average size bull and this is a big one? Like, what is that stretch there, just for listeners who may not, kind of gather that?
Yeah. So North Idaho, I think a really big bull typically is that 320 to 330 class. A 340 is fantastic. And if you find one that's over 340, like a 350 type, 350 to 370, it's unheard of. I know probably maybe 2 or 3 people that have killed a 350 type bull or bigger in the last decade and maybe the last 20 years in Idaho. I could probably count them on like 2 or 3 fingers.
Yeah.
There's those kind of bulls are not on the menu.
Right.
The country doesn't lend itself to that. The winters are hard. Those elk. My trail cam pictures. I run a lot of trail cams, and I'll leave them set all winter. So I'll put them up in July. I'll refresh cameras cards in July and through summer, and then I'll leave them. And then a lot of times I'll pick up elk coming back into that same habitat in about May. And those elk are just basically skeletons with some hide on top of them. It's like those bulls, they'll have, the first 3 points coming out, their nubs coming out as they're climbing back to the high country. But man, it's like, it takes such a toll where
they're worn down.
They're worn down. Like they're, in the areas in the valley, the river floor, there may be 4 feet of snow in April, type of thing, depending on the weather. So they have a pretty rough winter in that kind of country. So they pack on a lot of meat and they pack on a lot of horns from let's say May till August 10th when they quit growing, or maybe even mid-July or whatever, whenever they quit growing. They shed out the velvet usually the first week of July or August or so. But compared to other places, they have better winters, probably better habitat for wintertime, less snow, better forage in the backcountry in all summer. It just, so these elk for what they have to eat and how they have to live, a lot of places, let's say Utah, they don't have to compete with, big predators like wolves. So they got bears and lions, but they don't have wolves that seem to really beat them up pretty bad. So, the elk down there seem to grow a lot bigger, and maybe they got better minerals anyway down there. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to swing back because you just mentioned, you haven't finished editing the 2023. Can you walk me through your, most recent hunting season? I know we're on the verge here of turkey, and I kind of wanted to go there and ask you about what you got planned here in the immediate timeline. But let's bring it back to this last fall. What was this like for you? Where all did you go? What kind of success? What's sitting in your freezer right now? What are you cooking on a day to day? Kind of like let's take it back to that if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, yeah. 2023 has been dubbed my worst elk season of all time.
Oh no.
I had a tough year, man. It was tough. Elk didn't act right no matter where I went. I just did not get a lot of good bugling action. Elk would bugle a little bit, but it seemed like they were social distancing. They would answer a couple
600
times.
yards. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do my normal thing and move up and get over there by them. And the next thing you know, they're further away, the next time they answer. And then the next time they answer, they're further away, and then you may not get another one after that. Like, it was really weird. Like, usually they'll hold their ground pretty good. And I will say, like, when I kicked off my season in Idaho, and I wanted to hunt close to home. So if I'd have done my due diligence better, I would have looked at the number of tags that get sold in this particular area, and I would have seen, oh yeah, I don't want to go up there. There's way too many people. But I'm like, oh yeah, because I've spent a lot of time up there in the summertime scouting and camping, and there's doesn't seem to be a lot of people in the woods. And I'm like, oh, this would be great. And had trail cameras. I'm like, oh man, I got some really good bulls on trail camera. I was like, this place is going to be awesome. I wanted to kind of hunt a little closer to home so my son can come, because at the time he had a kind of a weird schedule and hard for him. He'd work nights and then he'd have a few days off and stuff. I was like, well, if I hunt close, then he'll come up and hunt. So we put together this plan. I hunted by myself the first 3 days of season, and I was on bulls, right away, but they weren't super vocal, which that's pretty typical of opening weekend, in Idaho. It's either you'll find one that's like, wow, he's kind of bugling pretty good, but these weren't. They would bugle enough to where you get close, and then I kind of gave up for the weekend, the Labor Day weekend, because I know a lot of recreationalists and people will be out there dirt biking and four wheeling and just it gets busy, and I'm like, no, I'm going to go back to town for that madness, right? So as I was leaving, a lot of people were pulling in, and when I came back with my son a few days later, it's like the people that came on the weekend to recreate, they might have stayed, or they traded spots with hunters. And man, there was a hunting camp in every single place that you could pitch a tent. It was crazy. And then there might be 7 pickups in one camp, and so you're like, okay, well, let's kind of hunt some obvious stuff that people drive by. I like to find some of those places. Sometimes people are we got to get to the back country, way far back, and hunt elk, so sometimes
you see them from the road. Yeah.
Sometimes you might find them and you might drive right by them. And
right.
So we tried some of those spots, and we were kind of getting fouled up. Anytime we'd hear a bull bugle, and like within a day, somebody'd be there on them. And then I'm like, all right, well, let's go to the back country. And then every trailhead had 7, 8, 10 pickups parked at it. And it's like, man, I'm not going to fight this. So then this particular zone had like 3 units within that zone. Okay, we'll try a different unit. So we tried a different unit. Same thing. Okay, we'll try the other unit. Everywhere we went, lots of people. I'm like, well, I don't think I want to continue to burn a bunch of gas trying to find a place to hunt here. I think we'll just call it, because I had a Montana tag burning a hole in my pocket. And Austin, my son, he's like, yeah, I got some stuff to do around the house anyway. I'll go do that and then go back to work. So cameraman Dusty and we left, and Dusty had a tag for the other side of Idaho. And I said, well, hey, on the way to Montana, let's stop for a few days and hunt for you and see, maybe we can get you a bull. So, and it's an area, they call it a capped zone in Idaho. So they limit the number of tags they sell to residents and non-residents, of course. So with that in mind, you think, oh yeah, there won't be very many people there. Man, it was just as bad as the other place. There were people camped everywhere. And elk were just not acting right. You would, if you could get one to bugle, they would only bugle a couple times. And if you put a move on them, and they'd clam up. But I think, and then we start, people, anytime we'd find elk, then within a day, there'd be people around us. And I think people were having the same kind of experience we were. And that's why it seemed like there was a lot more people than normal. I think typically when elk bugle pretty decently, you go out to your spot. Oh, I hear bulls bugling. You just keep going to that spot. You keep chasing around or whatever. And you don't really expand out too far because you're on elk, right? But I feel like everybody was kind of doing the same thing we were doing. We were trying to turn over every stone, trying to find an elk that would play. And finally, I think we were there 5 days. I'm like, let's go, man. Let's go to Montana. Maybe we'll have a change of luck. And because I had buddies up there saying, oh yeah, man, they're going good up here. A couple guys shot one, that people are shooting elk and bulls are bugling good. So we get up there just in time for them to quit of acting course, like that. Right? We get there. It's just like, man, this is a ghost town.
Should have been here yesterday. Yeah.
Right. I'm like, man, that was dumb. We should have hit that other spot on the way home, after we went to Montana and killed one. So then we fought pretty hard, like the rest of September into like, Montana, you can hunt into October in archery. And I think we went home on October 5th or something. And yeah, I didn't draw my bow back until September 28th, 29th, after being there from the starting bell through hunting most of the season. Um, yeah, it was rough. And then I missed.
Oh,
I missed a big bull. I ranged wrong. So there was in a big dug fir stand of timber, it's big open, no brush, and there's just big trees. And I zapped a bunch of these trees with my rangefinder. And I'm like, okay, yep, that one's 50, 40, 30, okay, got it in my head. And it'd been a little while. And then here comes this bull. I'm like, oh crap. And he gets behind this tree. I'm like, oh yeah, that tree right there was 50 yards. He steps out. I draw my bow, and he steps out, and he stops, and I send it, and it goes right over his back. That tree was 40 yards, so shot right over him.
man, that's tough, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it better to clean miss than, the opposite.
Right. So then we hunted hard and changed areas a lot, just trying to, get away from people, find bulls that would bugle, and we bounced around there. End up coming home shorthanded, man.
Did you get some other hunts with some other animals? I mean, are you
Yeah.
still going after deer, mule deer? Like, what is it? What else
So-
did you get some success with?
So then I went rifle hunting for elk. So I got home on like the 5th or 7th or something, October, and I turned right around, reloaded, and headed out. I think I got home on the 5th. I turned around and left on the 7th to hunt rifle in Idaho, up in that great burn country. And I got my ass handed to me there too. There's just not a lot of elk. And this last year there was way more people than I'd seen in 2022. So it's kind of weird. Like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes the fish and game kind of turn people onto areas, maybe they're like, oh yeah, you guys should go try that area. It's in the middle of frickin' nowhere. I mean,
You're like, stop, that's my spot.
yeah. This place is remote as can be. And like, I got a guy that followed me up the trail and got in front of me on opening morning type of a thing, and I was at the trail first, and he thought he should. I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere. You got 100 miles of road. You could have picked a trail anywhere to go up, and he wanted to come on this one. So anyway, it was a bad experience. Didn't have much. It was a really good camping trip. Let me tell you that. The weather was beautiful. It was really great for camping, but so then went to Montana with Phelps, deer hunting. Well, I went a little early and tried my hand at some rifle elk hunting in Montana because I still had that Montana elk tag burning a hole in my pocket. And all the elk I kept finding were on private, right? That's kind of like the crux of rifle season in Montana. Elk move from the high country and they, get a little snow on the ground and they move down on the private, and that's where they're at. And that's kind of what I ran into. I did find some on public the last day I was there, but I was unable to get onto them. They're too far. But
and
so
when you're sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, when you're hunting rifle, what caliber are you using? What grain bullet, and like, what is your range of like what you feel comfortable of taking an ethical shot at?
Yeah, my typical like elk hunting rifle is a 338 Win Mag. I shoot 180 grain Nosler AccuBond bullets. The federal custom shop, I have to get them out of there. They used to make these as factory ammo, but they discontinued them. And then, I mean, I'll give you an award if you can just go down to the local sporting goods store somewhere and buy a set of 338 Win Mag shells. I seen the super cheap Winchester PowerPoint, the same bullets I was shooting in 1989, right? Yeah. I seen some at the sporting goods store the other day, $95. What? They were the first ones I'd seen, not 338 Win Mag, I'd seen in the store for like 4 or 5 years. And yeah. They were like the crappiest ones you can buy for $95. On the flip side, you could buy a 300 Win Mag in that same style for like $49. Yeah. So it was just like, come on, guys. I don't need them that bad. So anyway, I get them out of the federal custom shop. They're expensive, but they're basically like hand loads. Yeah. So great shooting rounds. I can shoot. I've shot consistently out 600 yards because I got a loophole with I got the dial, and I've got the range-finding binoculars that has all the data for my gun in it. And I can hit consistently out to 500-600 yards. After that, once you get further than that, then a lot of other things really become crucial, so I'm not comfortable shooting past that. But ended up shooting my deer in Montana last year at 400 yards with that gun. But
Right on. Tell me about that deer. What was that one scoring, and or where?
it
Give
was
me a
it
little
was
bit
a
of background on the
it,
story
it
on
was a
that one.
whitetail. It was a whitetail, and what we kind of come to find out was Montana deer were kind of on the decline the last couple of years, and it was going to be a tough hunt. And I told Phelps, I said, you know what, the first decent deer I see, I think I'm going to shoot it because I don't want to. I've had a tough season. I got I got to take some meat home.
Deserve a win. Yes.
Yeah, the missus is not going to be happy with me if I come home with no meat again.
45 days you've been gone and there's nothing to show for it.
So we get this deer spotted, and I'm like, he's looking at through the spotter. I'm like, is it a mature deer? And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, I'm a shooter. He's like, well, you better come look. So I go over to the spotter. I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely a shooter. So I go lay down and I shoot it. But I was glad. I was happy, super happy to get that monkey off my back, and broke it down and brought it home. And then fast forward, we go to Kansas whitetail deer hunting, and we're like, oh, this is where it's going to be, because Kansas, the place we're going, our buddy Randy has lots of nice property. He manages herd well. He feeds them, whether it's supplements or crops. He's got these deer live in deer heaven, right?
Is this Newberg?
No, this is our buddy Randy Milligan.
Okay, got it.
So he owns this property there, and so we get out there, and the first evening we set on stand, this is November, we packed for cold weather, because the year before it was pretty cold when we were there. It was 78 degrees in the stand the first night. On the stand we're sitting there, and I've got these zip off fleece overalls, and I got my legs zipped out, and I've got them legs off, and I'm almost sitting in my underwear there. I'm just like, this is ridiculous. So the weather was warm all week, and it was not conducive to good deer feeding, and typically during that time of the year, our buddy Randy puts his stands on food sources, whether it's food plots or like on corn or something, where the does will come and eat the corn. Mm-hmm. And then the bucks don't really care too much about corn, but they'll come in and check the does that are on the corn, and then they'll just kind of move through. But none of the deer gave a crap about corn. They didn't care about the food plots. They were staying up in the timber and stuff. So if we had been more prepared, if we had some like tree saddles or some stands, to set up in trees and like pinch points and travel patterns, I think we'd have done really good. But the deer just weren't hitting the places we were at. Phelps ended up getting a nice buck, and then I missed. Here we go again. We got a nice weather pattern in. Well, the night that the weather came in, Phelps killed a buck, and within 15 minutes, I'm full draw on a big buck. I called in from like 150 yards. I called in with our new ground call. And I don't know if you're familiar with a redneck blind. It's like it's an elevated blind made out of fiberglass, I think. And it's got windows and stuff. And it's got a couple like picture windows. And then it's got these long, skinny windows in the corners that you can open up. And they're about 12 inches, maybe 15 inches wide. So you open them up, and then you can kind of, if you're a contortionist or maybe a little guy, you can like get over there and shoot through those windows good. But Dusty and I had to the cameraman Dusty, he had to kind of change spots with me. This buck's coming. I'm like, oh man, if he goes across there, I'm thinking he's going to come he was on a beeline. I thought he was going to come in about 30 yards. Well, at the last second, kind of veered off, and he went by at 50. So I'm like, man, I got to change position here. So I get out on my knees and kind of push up against the side of this thing and get my bow drawn, and I stop in. I'm like, okay. And I shoot, and I'm like, I think I might have got him. Couldn't really tell, I shot a lighted knock, and it's getting pretty dark out. It's in the last bit of shooting light. I see my lighted knot go over there and then kind of do a little bounce thing in the background. Like, it could have blown through him and been, behind him there. But so he kind of trots off. I'm like, okay, fall. He walks over back along the same line he took earlier to get there. And he walked over and then started making a scrape. I'm like, oh no, I missed him. And so I hit my grunt call and my bleat call again. I thought, okay, I'm going to call him in. And he kind of looked over there and just like, no,
Not
And
again.
he just kind of walked off. And by that time, it was too late. It was getting too dark anyway. But anyway, went over, looked at my arrow. Of course, it's clean as a whistle. But it was a giant, like 160-inch, 8-point, 4x4 whitetail. So that was very, very crushing. Very crushing.
So you got some redemption this fall, huh? I mean, where all are you going to be heading out this year? I know you're probably getting some plans together. I mean, obviously we're on the edge of turkey season. I'd like to ask you about where you're going to go there too, but what do you have planned for your elk hunt and maybe some deer hunting this fall?
Idaho for sure. So I have a good buddy who lives in Wyoming, Cody Wilson. He and I went bear hunting last spring together. Him and I and Corey Paulson, our business manager at Phelps, we went bear hunting last spring in Wyoming. And he's been wanting to come to Idaho for a long time. I'm like, hey, why don't you see if you can get a tag, because for a non-resident, it's like a whole ordeal trying to get a tag. And it's like, I don't know if you're going to get one. I mean, they call them over the counter, but it's not really over the counter. You got to kind of run the gauntlet to get a freaking tag in Idaho these days. So he gets a tag. I'm like, all right, so we're going to go. So him and I are going to go the last 2 weeks of September. And I have a buddy, this guy named Bradley Dammerman. He's a guy I went cat hunting with, shot that big mountain lion with, and shot a bear with him. And Jason here a couple weeks ago, and I went with him, and Jason got a mountain lion with him. So he's going to come hunting with me, elk hunting with me.
Cool.
I told him, I said, all right, here, because he's an outfitter, right? And it's hard for him to get away. I said, all right, you have to come this year. I don't care what it takes. I said, I will even come and guide the first week. If you can book a hunter that was going to book later in the month, if you can book them the first week, I will come and guide for you the first week of season, just so you can get out later. And I think it's going to work out. I don't know. I may or may not get to guide, but depend on the schedule of far as what he's got booked. But either way, he said he's coming. So
cool, man.
I'm pretty excited about that because he's a hell of an elk hunter and really good caller. So is Cody. They're both excellent elk callers. So it'd be good for have guys who can reciprocate for me. But then also I can't think of a couple better guys to call in a bull for, because they're both just awesome dudes and they're going to work hard and be fun to be with. So I can't wait for that. That's going to be fun. And then of course there's draw tags. We'll see where the drawings end up here. Maybe I'll get it to do some more hunting, for elk and deer.
Have you done much stuff down here in Texas?
No, I came down there once for elk shape camp, and some guys took us out and we went hunting hogs at nighttime with thermals. Yeah. That was pretty fun. But that's the only time I've really done anything in Texas.
Cool. Well, I got a couple spots, man. If you guys ever want to come down, I'm happy to host you guys out there. We got one in Southwest Texas, about 1,000 acres, one in Central Texas, about 300. Got a lot of melanistic deer at that one. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's just a wild population in Texas. There's like 7 counties where there's more melanistic whitetail deer than the rest of the world combined. It's just a very, very bizarre thing. But, you're just like looking, all of a sudden you see this black deer walk out. What's that? It's pretty cool though. It's pretty neat to see. Well, moving on to the idea of like turkey season, man. I mean, I know I am jonesing. I am, days away from the season starting over here. Do you guys have any plans to get out there and do some turkey hunt in your neck of the woods or traveling? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So turkey season can be really full. I'm going to start the opener April 15th in Oregon. I've got this old guy, this old buddy of mine that I met. He's not we haven't known each other in a long time, but it feels like we have. So, I met him at the Portland Sportsman Show in 2017, maybe. And he, as a young man, he hunted all that same country that I grew up hunting. Cool. That same back country. And anyway, so we started swapping stories and stuff. And then fast forward one fall, I'm elk hunting and I hear a rig coming. I'm like, I tell cameraman Dusty, I said, hey, there's a rig coming, hide. So we're hiding. We're standing basically on the other side of the pickup and he can see our feet and he pulls up. He's like, I see your feet over there. And we came out. And it's him. It's my buddy Ron Hewitt, and I had never told him where I hunt. I told him where I used to hunt, but I didn't ever tell him where I hunt now. I'm like, and he didn't tell me. He didn't tell me where he hunted either. Now I'm like, oh, this is where you're hunting, huh? So just so happened we were hunting the same dang spot, And so anyway, we've become good friends over the years. So every spring he invites me to come turkey hunting over there, and so I'll go over and spend some time. And he's kind of like that cool grandpa or cool uncle type guy. You know, I don't get enough of that kind of time. My dad's passed away, and my grandfathers both were long passed away, so I don't get that kind of time. And I think that's important, to feed your soul, or help you be a man or whatever. I think that's important. So I always go enjoy my time with Ron hunting turkeys in Oregon.
No, man, working with the elders and the mentors of the past, I mean, it's, or the mentors of the present, but like being able to have that time, that camaraderie. And, especially as hunters get older too, they might not have the same ability to get out as they used to, but being able to spend that time and pass on that knowledge and those stories.
Mm-hmm.
And, man, it's immeasurable. It's such an enriching thing. So that's great that you have that. So then you got Oregon there checked off, and then,
yep. And then I'm gonna drive home, and the next day get on a plane and drive and fly to Kansas. Our buddy Randy Milligan out there, out to his place where we hunt whitetails. He's gonna have us come out again, and so Phelps and I, we both drew tags. So in Kansas, you got to draw a turkey tag now. So we both were lucky enough to draw a turkey tag. So we'll go out there for, I don't know, a week, 5 days, whatever, and hunt that. And then later in May, we're gonna do some stuff in Washington State. So Randy, our buddy, he's going to come out. We're going to take him hunting. So we're going to hunt with him, Chris Parrish, and James Harrison. They're all coming out, and then we're going to hook up with some other guys. So there's a guy that's got a YouTube channel, John, I think it's John Weippe. I don't know how, Weik. Anyway, I think Phelps had him on the podcast, but
yeah. The name sounds very familiar.
His YouTube channel is Northwest Spur Chasers, and then our buddy Samong Yang, he's got a YouTube channel too. It's man, I can't remember what the heck is. It's like Sci Outside or something, I think it's called. But anyway, we're gonna hunt with those guys up in Washington State, and just give turkeys hell up there. There's a lot of lots of turkeys in Washington State, and we're gonna track them down and call them in and shoot them.
Nice. Are you guys filming all these hunts, or is there some where you're like, this is
I won't be able to film with Ron because he's got some access to some private property, and the landowner said, hey, I just prefer you not to film, because I think he don't want people identifying that property like, hey, that's that spot, maybe I want to go trespass. So I want to respect that. But we'll film in Kansas, and we'll film with those guys up in Washington State. And we might even just have those guys host the film on their YouTube channels. I think they got a better turkey following with it than we do. And then, if I can, I want to hunt in Idaho. If I don't run out of season first, but I'd like to hunt some of my old stomping grounds up where I grew up. Cause up where I grew up is, there's lots of turkeys up there too. And, I might.
What's your season then? What is that for Idaho?
I think it ends the 27th, 28th of May.
Okay.
So right before Memorial Day weekend, it typically ends. So depend on when Memorial falls, but so I might have time to squeak in another hunt up there with my wife or maybe a buddy or something. So.
Nice, man. Well, it sounds like you got some good plans. I'm excited to see those films when they do come out. I was kind of curious too. Are you guys still, I know you joined up with the Elk Collective, you and Jason, a handful of other folks. Is that a project that's still happening right now, or are you kind of diverted more with the stuff with Phelps and Under the Meat Eater and kind of connection?
Yeah, we stepped away from the Elk Collective and to focus on Phelps and Meat Eater and stuff.
Yep.
But now the Elk Collective they've partnered with Eastman's, I guess. Okay. So they're continuing on with new cool content, and the guys at Eastman's no doubt know their stuff. So that's still going to be a really good resource for people that want to learn about elk hunting. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I know there's still some videos that you guys had put on and some, things. So it's still like there is a resource for people that are joining that to see what you got to share. Cause obviously you have a wealth of knowledge. And as far as, I even saw, when I was watching the ghost, video, when there's a lot of things that I'm sure that you guys are planning on putting out, is it usually about a year from the time you guys have filmed something to come out? Are you guys kind of putting stuff, okay, you got deer hunting or elk hunting, and then that next year you're putting it out right before the season? Is that kind of a typical turnaround for most of the things you guys are filming?
Yeah, some of it was there for a while. We would, as soon as season would get over, we would edit like crazy and try to have it ready to go in January, February, March time frame. But there's a lot of elk hunting to watch during that same time. There's a lot of folks, producing content during that same time from their earlier in the fall. So, and then that's a really busy time for us with trade shows.
Right.
And budgets and trying to figure out the next year to come. That's a really busy time for us. So rather than, kind of work like a madman during December, January, then we're trying to space it out to where we get the stuff edited in a good amount of time, and then try to have that come out maybe midsummer or like June, July, August, somewhere in there. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I kind of forgot about the trade show because you guys had that boom recently. There's been so many. I mean, it's like, how many of you guys are y'all going in person? Are you doing most of the ones up in that area?
Well, typically, we'll have 3 or 4 every year during that January, February time. But this year we had a little lighter load because they did Western Hunt and the Portland show at the same weekend. So, but then we had to split the team. So Jason Phelps and the crew over there, they went to Portland and manned the booth. And my wife and I and our other dream, I call them the dream team because try to get a dig on Jason somehow. But me and the dream team, then we went to Salt Lake City and manned the booth there. And then we coming up in April, we're going to be at the Mile High show. Phil Mendoza down there is putting on the Mile High expo there, and that should be really cool. He said, the sports show that's been going to Denver, Colorado for a long time is just doesn't maybe represent the hunting community like it used to. And Phil wanted to build an excellent show, kind of like the Western Hunting Expo, something that's just very representative of the hunting community, and get all the good key companies there that and not have a bunch of like chrome polish and like those little electric massagers and fishing lures and stuff that you see at some of those shows. So you want to kind of build definitely like a Western themed hunting show. So we're pretty excited about going to that. This will be the first year for that show, and I feel like it's going to be a big hit. Hopefully see lots of people there.
Nice. You got a few questions left, and one of them was kind of about, one of the things you're taking to the woods. I know that the Maverick signature amp call is one that, I've heard you talk about in some different interviews and podcasts. That's kind of one of your go-tos.
Yeah.
And obviously you got the Renegade signature, bugle tube there. I was curious, like, what are, aside from those, maybe, what are some calls, for elk that you would suggest people check out from the Phelps line? And I know you've also mentioned before, hey, it's good to get a couple different types to try of different, but maybe some suggestions for people who are wanting to, maybe some beginners that are wanting to get into it, or folks that, maybe some of the new lines you guys maybe have coming out this year that you can kind of tease and talk about. Just kind of looking for some suggestions on that.
Yeah. So, especially for new callers, you just never know. People always say, well, what's the easiest one to blow for a new caller? Well, it's hard to know or quantify what a new caller's point of reference is on how hard to blow a call. One person may think, man, I need to blow this super hard because an elk is loud and I need to be really loud. And then another caller, maybe they don't have that kind of like pressure to blow a call that loud, or maybe they don't want to blow, and maybe they want to be more stealthy. Maybe they've heard that maybe you shouldn't blow calls real loud. But to define that on a person-to-person basis is impossible, right? Like I'll ask people point blank, like, well, how do you think? And they're like, I don't even know if I blow hard or if I don't. I don't know. And so what I like to do, I like to recommend three different calls that have three different basically different latexes. So I'll always recommend a Maverick. Our Maverick is a thick latex, tight stretch, which equals hard air pressure. So if you feel like you blow hard or you don't know how hard you're going to blow, that Maverick is a good one. And then also we have our gray amp. So that's kind of that middle of the road latex, kind of a medium thickness, medium stretch. So you don't have to blow it nearly as hard as you do Maverick. If you blow super hard, you may overblow the gray one. But if you don't blow hard enough, then you may not be getting the performance out of that gray one that you want either. So that's why I also recommend our black amp. So our black amp has red latex, and it's kind of a pretty thin latex with a pretty tight stretch. So it doesn't take much air pressure at all. And you can get some really great notes out of it. You can bugle, you can cow call. All three of them you can bugle and cow call with. But after you play around with one of those, you'll be like, oh, I really like this one or that one. And then I recommend whichever one you feel like most natural with or comfortable with, then practice with that one. And that's what I would be like, all right, every day practice with that thing. And you don't have to practice like for an hour a day. Keep it simple, 5-10 minutes a day. Just get that muscle memory to where every time you put your diaphragm in, your tongue knows, oh, I know what we're supposed to do. I don't feel like I need to gag or throw up. I know how much pressure to put, how much tongue pressure, how much air pressure. I know exactly the spot. There's like a little sweet spot. You put it on your tongue. And once you kind of get that muscle memory, after I say if a person does this like 10 minutes a day for a week or two, it's going to become second nature. You'll pick it up pretty quick. So then practice with that one that you like. And then after you get pretty comfortable with it, go ahead and pick up one of those other two that you bought in the initial and play with those a little bit. Because a lot of times what I find, people will start out with this one as a beginner. They manipulate it best. But then once they kind of understand airflow and how to manipulate the call, they like one of the others better. They're like, well, I like this one, but this one's way better now that I know how to blow it. Right. So, and then with those three calls in mind, let's say you like the certain one, but maybe you don't want to blow so hard, or maybe you'd like to blow harder. Then we have these other calls in between those as well. So we have a call for almost every single nuance for air pressure for people and how they want to blow it. Then we also have like these mini amp calls. Yeah. So they're just a tiny diaphragm. So there's a lot of guys and gals and kids that have a narrow palate. Yep. And it's weird. You might think, oh yeah, that guy's 6'5" and 300 pounds. There's no way that guy needs a mini amp. And you look at, he'll open his mouth and show you like, oh wow, you got a really narrow palate. Well, here, try one of these, and then they can use them. So that mini amp has been a game changer for a lot of people. So I recommend those diaphragms. And then we have this new, I prefer that Renegade bugle tube. I love it. It just kind of goes for my kind of calling. And maybe that's because I'm just used to it too. I've used it a lot and I'm used to how much air I put into it. But we came out with this new call. It's called the Unleashed V2, this new bugle tube. And the cool part about that call is it's got two different mouthpieces that come with the call. Right. It's basically an elk bugling system. So it has an external bugle mouthpiece. It's called the Easy Bugler. So for people who just can't use a diaphragm at all, maybe they've tried them and they're like, I gag or they tickle, or maybe folks with dentures, they just can't use a diaphragm. So that's the perfect solution is that Easy Bugler mouthpiece. Or if you don't want to use then it comes with the just a flared mouthpiece for diaphragms. So you just kind of pick your poison there. So that's a really versatile call. It has a really nice neoprene cover on it. It's got a stretchy lanyard that goes on there. We took everything that we didn't like about bugle tubes and everything we liked about bugle tubes and put it into one tube. So we could try to have like the most up-to-date current bugle tube on the market, right? Like, bugle tubes, like, you can't really do too many things to a bugle tube to take it to the next level of technology. So we just kind of took everything we could possibly think of, including, the engineering of the inside of the tube, to try to get the best sound, the best sounds and the best back pressure you can get. So that's a great way to go if a person's looking to get into calling, you don't have a bugle tube at all. And as far as new products that we were coming out with this year, we kind of showed them off a little bit at our Western Hunting Show and at Portland, but it's called the All-American 3-pack. and we've teamed with 3 world champion out callers. So we got Jermaine Hodge, Eric Berglund, and Tony Gilbertson. So these guys are world champion out callers. And we said, hey guys, we want you to design a diaphragm that'd be your signature diaphragm. And we want to put it in a 3-pack. So we're going to sell each gentleman's diaphragm in that 3-pack. So you can pick up the 3-pack and then try them out, see which ones you like. And I feel like down the road, in a year or so, we'll probably have singles of each of those, right. But until people try them and kind of see, and they're all, and all 3, I was like a little bit worried because all those guys love the Maverick, right? I'm like, great, we're going to have 3 Maverick copycats here, but they're all very different from the Maverick, and they're all very different from each other. So I was like, I was delighted. I hadn't even tried these calls until the show. Like I got a package of them at the show. I'm like, all right, I'm going to try these. And they're all very different. They're all good. So I think people are going to really like those. And it seems like people always really like new stuff too. Like, I want to try something new this year and maybe see if they find something that's just perfect for them. So they're definitely a different nuance than any of our other calls. So I think people will want to check those out.
Well, and I also remember there was an interview you were talking about. It's good to have, and different sounding calls too, because like maybe there's a bull that you have been trying to call in and it's just not closing that distance and it's not getting there. Whereas then you might have something that has a little bit different nuance and a different sound that may be of interest because maybe that first call wasn't working. And sometimes having that kind of variety can come in play, because it sounds like, in any kind of hunting situation, you got to have any tools that you can use in the toolbox. If you limit yourself to one call, that may be a detriment. So,
right. Well, yeah, absolutely. It's just like fishing, right? You don't just go fishing with one rooster tail in your tackle box. I mean, you got every freaking spinner known to man. You got flies in there. You got Potski eggs. You got power bait. I mean, you got everything there is in your tackle box, right? So that's the same with elk hunting diaphragms, especially if you're a new caller and maybe you can't get all the different sounds out of one diaphragm. Maybe it takes having three or four different diaphragms to make those different nuanced sounds, then that's great. It's a win if you can take that to the woods like that. And like that easy bugler mouthpiece I kind of talked about on that new bugle tube, then let's say you're chasing a bull, you're a diaphragm guy and you're chasing a bull one day with diaphragms and you don't get it done. You could potentially go back the next day with that easy bugler and take in again, and he's going to think you're a different bull because it's definitely got a different sound profile to it, and maybe he won't suspect it's that same guy that run him ragged the day before.
Right. Well, and another tool in the toolbox too is the easy sucker that you guys have that I've seen a lot of people talk about having great success with that. So that's another one that I think people are getting into it. We should check that out as well. And we're going to be doing some giveaway details will be, kind of announced when this podcast actually drops. And, so we'll have it all in the notes. We'll definitely have people get a chance to get a hold of some of these and try them out. And before we go, I wanted to ask your opinion. Someone have been asking a lot of the folks that have been coming on, is their idea of like legacy. And obviously, there's two aspects. You can say in a professional legacy in your work and what you're doing, and obviously in a personal setting as well, you and your family as a family man. And I just kind of wanted to, ask you, is that something you think about a lot? Is that something as, the years go by, you're wondering more about what it is that you will be remembered for and the things you leave behind? And just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I haven't really put much thought in that at all over the years, too much. You brought that up earlier before we got on there, and I don't know. I think one thing I would like, as far as being a part of this hunting industry, I feel like maybe a legacy I could leave behind or maybe be known for later on is like, I want to try to leave it better than I found it. Right. I want to build good, strong relationships. I want to do good business with people. I don't want to take advantage of people because there's a lot of sharks out there in this industry and in others, of course. I think it's everywhere, but I want to leave it better than I found it. And, if anything, I want people to be like, oh yeah, I met that guy. He's a good guy. I don't want to try to come across as a jerk or a pompous a-hole or whatever. I just want to get along with everybody, and I want to leave this place, this industry better than I found it. And if I can share my knowledge with what I've learned along the way, I'm happy to do it, because when I started elk hunting, there were some people that were sharing resources, but it wasn't the same as it is today. Like technology and everything has advanced so much with YouTube and apps and all this stuff where you can learn. I mean, you can learn whatever you want to learn nowadays. Back then it was like, well, he had a VHS tape and maybe you read a book, and the information hasn't really changed that much, in my opinion, from what I read when I was 15 years old versus what kind of my take on elk hunting is today. I feel like not a lot's changed as far as tactics and the way elk behave, and it seems like I tell people the same kind of stuff that I learned back then. It's like elk hang up, they do this, they do that, but anyway, I'm happy to share what I've learned with people, and I think that for just like my professional legacy, maybe that's what it'd be. Just try to leave this industry better than I find it, and if I can help someone and encourage them and maybe I always say elk hunting will change your life. And if that's your reason to live, if that's your reason to work hard at a career, to make money, if that's your reason to become fit or become, to make healthy choices, if that's your reason to be a better husband or a better father, whatever that reason is, I think elk hunting can change your life and the people around you. So if I can help people do that, that's a huge win to me.
That's a great answer. And I know you've talked about it. I know I've talked about it on the podcast, a lot of different guests, what we get going out into the outdoors, and some of those things, like you said, health, your exercise, you're getting out there. It's good for your mental health. Getting out there. I mean, you talked about it with your father coming back. I mean, I know a lot of different veterans that is something that has been something that's helped keep them here when they've had different struggles, and it's so empowering. And, it's not just always about, I think people are like, oh, you're going out there and you're dominating deer. You hear it from the antis or whatever. And it's like, we're enjoying this way of life. We're putting food on the table with our family, and we know where it came from. I don't think you can get more authentic than that. And you're being a part of that landscape. And, I know you've talked too about like, how great it is to have a group of, people in your, camp, whatever it may be, deer, elk, turkey, whatever it is. Like you have that camaraderie and, people who are working with each other. That is a huge importance. But then also getting your time out in the woods. And I know you've talked about that too. It's like, there's also an accountability. Hey, if I mess up, it's on me. Right. But it's exactly. But when you're out there and you have that, it's a spiritual experience. It's different for each person, but it is something that is so soul filling, and it's so fulfilling all in and of itself. So, I love being able to bring people out and share that, and being able to introduce people into hunting. And I know when you're able to, at your level of experience, being able to, give these tips and tricks and pointers and things to people to be able to advance their awareness, and they can have more success, which will probably, want them to get out there and do that more or bring other people into the fold. I think that kind of thing is contagious, and that's the type of spirit that we need to be able to bring to ourselves in this outdoor world of that true authentic connection that we have out in the world. So I definitely, that reverberates a lot with me and what you're saying there too. So, I appreciate you sharing that, and I appreciate you coming here and talking with me today. And I know our guest is going to learn a lot. For those who are interested in following your journey, can you give some of your social handles, what websites to follow? Obviously we got Phelps Game Calls, and, with the Meat Eater umbrella. Why don't you just go ahead and give, some of these handles and places where they can, learn more and maybe watch some of these videos we talked about.
Yeah. So on Instagram, I'm on there. I'm the Bugler, one word. Same with YouTube. So I've got a bunch of content on there, my old content. I'm hoping to put some new stuff on there. I'm really hoping, crossing my fingers, it could happen. And then on Phelps Game Calls YouTube channel, of course, all of my hunts for the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years are on there, as well as with Jason Phelps. And then Facebook, the Bugler as well. So those are the best places to find me. And I do lots of podcasts, with other folks. And then Cutting the Distance, of course, is the one Jason and I do. So if you want to check out, if you're a podcast listener, which you probably are, if you're listening to this one, check out our list of different podcasts. You may find something that interests you on there.
Yeah, well, you guys got some great guests. You have some great information you're sharing on that. It's a great podcast. I really suggest people go and check that out. And once again, man, I really appreciate you coming out here today, and we'll be in touch. And you let me know when you're ready to come on down to Texas, man.
All right, that sounds great.
All right, you take care.
Yeah, thanks, bud. You too.
Cheers.